They thought I was too old to fight back, too tired to stand up for myself. They thought I'd just sit in my rocking chair, silently watching as they took everything from me. But what they didn't know is that even when you think you've been forgotten, there's a fire that never really dies. And when the time came, I made sure my revenge was a lesson they'd never forget. My name is Margaret, and I'm 76 years old. I never imagined I'd be telling a story like this. After all, most people my age are content with simply relaxing, enjoying the fruits of a long life. I thought I would be too. But life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs when you least expect it. And I learned that no matter how old you are, there are always battles left to fight. I spent my life building a future for my children, Sarah and James. When my husband Robert passed away, I felt like I was losing everything, that I couldn't fall apart. My children still needed me, and I had a business to run, a small but beloved floral shop that Robert and I had built together from scratch. It was more than just a business. It was a symbol of our life together. It was my pride and joy. For years, I poured my heart and soul into that shop. I worked long hours, crafting beautiful floral arrangements, providing comfort to people during their happiest and saddest moments. I thought this shop would be my legacy, something I could pass down to my children when the time came. And I did everything in my power to ensure they would inherit it, safeguarding it from any threat. I thought they would be grateful, that they would see it for what it truly was, a piece of me. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. Sarah, my oldest, had always been my right hand. From the time she was little, she would help me in the shop, learning the ins and outs of the business. She had an entrepreneurial spirit. Just like Robert and I thought she would take over when I was ready to step back. But as she grew older, I began to notice a shift. She became more focused on her own life and less on the family business. She married Mark, a man I wasn't entirely sure I trusted, and they moved into a bigger house in the suburbs. Mark was charming, sure, but something about him always rubbed me the wrong way. He seemed to have an opinion about everything, especially about the shop. He would drop by uninvited, suggesting ways to modernize the business, asking if I had thought about expanding or selling. But I wasn't interested in modernizing the soul of the business. I didn't want it to become something corporate, something unrecognizable. I had built it with love, with hard work, and that was something I wasn't willing to compromise. But Sarah? Well, she started listening to him. She didn't just take his advice, she started pushing my decisions aside, telling me things like, "Maybe it's time to retire, Mom. You've worked enough." I had no intention of retiring. I loved what I did, and I still had the energy to give it my all. That wasn't how Sarah saw it. She didn't understand why I wasn't ready to let go. And Mark? He never once cared about the blood, sweat, and tears I had put into the shop. He just saw it as a potential payday. James, on the other hand, had never shown much interest in the business. He became an accountant, living in his own world, detached from the shop's day-to-day operations. I never pushed him into the business. I let him follow his own path. But I always believed that, no matter what, he would be there for me when the time came. After all, he was my son. Family is family, right? But as the years passed, James became more distant as well. The phone calls became fewer, and visits were infrequent. When I did see him, it felt like he was just going through the motions, like he didn't really want to be there. It wasn't that he didn't love me. It was that I had become a part of his life that he could afford to put on a shelf and forget. They didn't understand me. They didn't understand that I had built this business not just for them, but for all of us. This wasn't just a job, it was my life's work, my legacy. But they didn't see it the same way. It wasn't until Sarah and Mark started talking about selling the shop that the full weight of their betrayal hit me. It came out of nowhere. One evening, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. I was folding laundry in the other room, but their voices carried. We could sell the property. Sarah, Mark said, his voice slick and smooth. The real estate market is booming. Think about how much money we could make. Your mum's getting older. She won't be able to handle the business for much longer anyway. Sarah didn't say much at first, but I could tell she was considering it. The thought of selling the shop, it felt like a knife to my heart. How could they think of it like that? Just another piece of property to cash in on. This wasn't just a business. It was my heart. It was Robert's and my sweat and dreams wrapped in flowers. But I wasn't done yet. Mom deserves to retire. Mark continued, oblivious to the hurt he was causing. We could take the money, buy something new maybe, invest in a chain of floral shops. Think about how much we could grow it. That's when I felt something snap inside me. I wasn't ready to retire. I wasn't ready to step aside and let them take what I had worked for. They thought they could push me aside, make me fade into the background like an old, irrelevant relic. But they didn't know who they were dealing with. I wasn't just going to let them take the shop, take my life's work, and turn it into something cold and soulless. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. That night I decided that things had to change. I would not sit idly by and let them sell everything I'd built. They thought I was weak. They thought I was too old to fight back. But they were wrong. The game was on, and they had no idea what was coming. It was clear now. They thought I was done for. My children, my own flesh and blood, had written me off as an old woman, someone they could push aside without consequence. They thought I would passively fade into the background while they took everything I had built. They didn't realize, though, that I still had fire in me, fire that had only grown stronger with the years. The more I thought about what they had planned for the shop, the angrier I became. But it wasn't just anger. It was determination. I wasn't going to let them tear apart everything I had worked for. This wasn't just about money or property. This was about my legacy. It was about respect. The first thing I did was put my plan into motion. I began to quietly rearrange things, taking steps to secure what I could. I wasn't going to confront them right away. I knew that would only give them a chance to dismiss me again. No, I had to be strategic. Every move had to be carefully calculated. Every detail in place before they could catch on. I started by hiring a lawyer, someone I could trust, someone who didn't have any ties to my family, who wouldn't be swayed by Sarah or Mark's charm. I made sure my will was updated, ensuring that the shop would remain under my control, that they wouldn't be able to sell it without my approval. I also added provisions that would make it impossible for them to gain control of it without meeting certain conditions. If they wanted it, they would have to earn it. The lawyer helped me secure the assets of the business. I wanted to make sure that even if they tried to sell the property, they wouldn't be able to access the shop's legacy without going through legal hurdles. I even considered putting the shop in a trust, so it couldn't be liquidated easily. This wasn't just a battle for ownership, it was a battle to protect the very soul of what Robert and I had created. But it wasn't just legal maneuvers I was focusing on. I knew the business needed a change. I had been running the same old floral designs, the same setup for years. It wasn't that it was outdated. It was a tradition, something that had served me and the customers well. But if I was going to prove to Sarah and Mark that the shop wasn't just an easy payout, I needed to show them that it was still thriving. It was still vital. I hired a young, enthusiastic floral designer, someone with fresh ideas, someone who wasn't weighed down by the traditions of the past, but who could bring a modern touch without losing the essence of what we had. Her name was Emily, and she quickly became my right hand. Together, we revamped the interior, reorganized the shop to give it a more inviting, contemporary feel, and added new arrangements that appealed to younger customers. We didn't abandon the classics, no. We kept those, but we also expanded into new territory. Slowly, I could feel the shop come alive again. The customers returned, drawn by the new designs, the fresh energy. We started getting more orders for weddings, corporate events, and holiday celebrations. People were starting to notice. And that was the key. Sarah and Mark needed to see that the shop wasn't a dead asset. It wasn't a business they could just sell and forget about. It was a living, breathing part of this community. And it was thriving. Every day I worked alongside Emily, perfecting the designs, greeting the customers, and making sure that everything ran smoothly. I made sure the quality was impeccable, and the experience was unforgettable. I wasn't just running a floral shop, I was running a legacy. And I would fight to keep it. But as the business began to flourish, Sarah and Mark were still plotting. They didn't know I was onto them. They continued to push forward with their plans to sell the shop, convinced I was too old to care too, tired to notice. They would occasionally ask me how things were going, but the smiles on their faces were always forced, like they were just waiting for me to step aside and let them take control. It was on one of these visits that I decided to show them the changes we had made, to make them see that the shop wasn't going to be easily discarded. They came to the shop one afternoon, their usual smiles plastered on their faces, expecting to find me sitting behind the counter, hands folded, content to let them take over. But when they walked in, they stopped dead in their tracks. The shop was full of fresh flowers, the air alive with the scent of roses and lily, and Emily was arranging a gorgeous centerpiece for a wedding. Customers were chatting at the front counter, placing orders for bouquets. It was vibrant, busy, and beautiful. "Mom, what is all this?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with confusion. "Why didn't you tell me you were making changes? Why? Didn't you involve me?" I didn't flinch. I had been waiting for this moment. "I didn't need to involve you, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "This shop isn't just something to sell off when I'm gone. It's something I built with Robert, and I'm not going to let you tear it apart just because you see it as a business opportunity." Mark stepped forward, looking around the shop with a mixture of surprise and frustration. "What are you talking about? This place is old. It's time to move on." I stood my ground. "It's not old, Mark, it's timeless. And if you're planning to sell this business, you'll have to go through some serious legal hoops to do it. This shop will stay in the family. And if you want it, you'll have to prove you can run it the way it deserves to be run." They stood there speechless. I could see the realization dawning on them. They thought I was just an old woman, past her prime, too fragile to keep up with the demands of a business. But they had underestimated me. I wasn't just a mother. And I wasn't just a grandmother. I was a woman who had fought through adversity her whole life, who had built something from the ground up. And I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me without a fight. "We'll see about this," Sarah said, her tone colder now. "You're not getting any younger, Mom. You can't keep running this place forever." "I'm not running it forever," I replied, my voice firm. "But I will run it as long as I'm able. And when the time comes, I'll make sure Mira inherits it, not you." Their faces fell. They knew then that their plans had been foiled. I wasn't done for. Not yet. And as long as I had breath in me, I would make sure the shop would stay. In the family, my family, and that it would remain a testament to everything Robert and I had worked for. End of part 2. I had been working for weeks, silently laying the foundation for the moment when I would finally confront them. Sarah and Mark still hadn't figured out the changes I had made. They thought I was sitting back, waiting for them to take control. But instead, I was quietly turning the shop into a success they could no longer dismiss. I watched them closely during the next few visits. They came by to check in, but their eyes were always on the shop, always calculating. It wasn't about how the business was thriving, it was about what they could get from it. They thought I was a foolish old woman who couldn't see through their plans. But they didn't realize that, even in my age, I still had the sharpest mind around. I had seen enough to know exactly what they were doing. One afternoon they came. In like usual, their smiles plastered on their faces. But I could see the tension in Sarah's eyes. It was time. "Mum," Sarah said, her voice sweet, too sweet. "We've been talking, and Mark and I think it's time you retired. You've done enough. You can take it easy now. We'll handle everything from here." I could feel my blood start to boil. She said it like it was a favor, like they were doing me a kindness. They wanted to take everything I had worked for, all of it, without a second thought. "Retire?" I asked, my voice calm but unwavering. "You think I'm ready to just give up everything I've built? Hand it over to you like it's yours to take? After all these years, that's how you see me?" Sarah's expression faltered for a moment. "We just think it's time, Mum. You're getting older, and we have a plan for the shop. We can modernize it, make it bigger, turn it into something you never could." I wasn't surprised at her words. I had heard them 1,000 times before. But this time, something in me snapped. I had worked my whole life to build this. It wasn't just a business, it was my legacy, my blood, my sweat. They thought they could take it away from me just because I was older. Just because they thought I didn't have the strength to stand up for what was mine. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not retiring. Not now. Not ever. You want the shop? You'll have to earn it." I could see the shock on their faces. They hadn't expected me to fight back, let alone stand up to them with such force. Mark stepped forward, trying to keep his composure. "This is ridiculous, Margaret," he said, his voice laced with frustration. "You're too old for this. You've spent your entire life working. It's time to let us take over." "No," I repeated, standing my ground. "I'm not done yet. I've been running this shop since before you ever came into the picture. Mark, I've poured my heart into it, and I'm not letting anyone take it away without a fight. If you want the business, if you think you can run it better than me, you'll have to prove it." I could see them both exchanging nervous glances. They hadn't expected this. They thought I was just going to fade into the background. But they were wrong. For the next few weeks, I kept working behind the scenes, putting everything I had into protecting the shop. I had already spoken to my lawyer, and the legal protections were in place. I made sure that when the time came, I could transfer everything to the right person, the person who would appreciate what the shop truly meant. Mira, my youngest granddaughter, was the only one who had always appreciated the business for what it was. She spent time with me, helping with the floral arrangements, listening to the stories of Robert and I, and truly understanding the heart of the shop. She was the only one who showed the respect the business deserved. The day I had been preparing for came sooner than expected. Sarah and Mark came to the shop, ready to finalize their plans for a sale, assuming they would just walk in and take control. But what they didn't know was that I had already made the necessary changes. I had changed the will, secured the business, and made sure that Mira was legally designated takeover. It wasn't about revenge, it was about preserving what Robert and I had built, and making sure it didn't fall into the wrong hands. I looked at Sarah and Mark as they walked into the shop, expecting to find an easy victory. But they stopped in their tracks. The shop was bustling with customers, flowers filling the air with fragrance, and Mira was at the counter, talking to a client. Everything was running smoothly. "What is all this?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp with disbelief. "Mum, you were supposed to be winding things down. You were supposed to be stepping aside. I looked her in the eyes, not backing down. I'm not stepping aside, Sarah. And this business isn't for sale. Not anymore. Mira is taking over. And she will run it with the same heart and care that Robert and I always did. Mark stepped forward, anger bubbling in his chest. You can't be serious, Margaret. You're too old for this. You don't understand how things work anymore. I smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just won. I understand more than you think, Mark. You see, I've been running this place for decades. And I've been through too much to let you two walk away with it without putting up a fight. The truth hit them then. They had underestimated me. They thought I was an old woman, too tired and too weak to stand up to them. But they had no idea what kind of fight they were in for Dot in the end. They tried to fight me, but it was too late. The legal protections I had in place were airtight. The business was no longer in their hands, and Mira was now its rightful owner. They tried to contest my decision, but it didn't matter. The shop was staying in the family, and it would continue to thrive under someone who truly cared about it. Mira took over the business, and she ran it with the same passion, care, and integrity that Robert and I had always envisioned. The shop flourished, and as for Sarah and Mark, they were left to deal with the consequences of their greed. I had always believed that a legacy wasn't just about money or property. It was about the love and care you put into the things you build. I had built something beautiful with Robert, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. Not even my own children. They thought I was done for. But they were wrong. Grandmas, revenge wasn't about anger or bitterness. It was about standing up for what was mine, showing them that you're never too old to fight for what you believe in. And when the dust settled, it was clear. I wasn't finished yet.